The old horse led her to a pothole, and what she found there changed everything. The wind whipped through Champ's mane, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. He stood at the fence line, his aging muscles rippling beneath his chestnut coat, his gaze fixed on the rolling hills of the Montana ranch he'd called home for nearly 2 decades. He was an American quarter horse, a breed known for its strength and intelligence, and he'd lived up to that reputation every day of his life. But today, a deep unease settled in his gut, a feeling as foreign to him as the sleek, silver car that sat idling in the driveway. Martha, his beloved owner, approached him, her weathered face etched with a sadness that mirrored his own. She stroked his nose, her touch gentle despite the tremor in her hand. "I'm so sorry, Champ," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish things were different." Champ nudged her hand, his soft whinny a plea he couldn't articulate. He didn't understand the changes that were happening, only that the familiar rhythm of their life was being disrupted. The ranch, with its wide-open spaces and the comforting routine of work, was all he'd known since Martha rescued him from a life of neglect. He'd been a scrawny, skittish thing back then, his spirit broken by a cruel owner. But Martha, with her patient kindness and unwavering love, had coaxed him back to health, restoring his trust in humans. Now she was selling the ranch, moving to California to be closer to her daughter. It was a decision born of necessity, her aging body no longer able to handle the demands of ranch life. But it meant leaving Champ behind. At his age, transporting him across the country was out of the question. "You'll find a good home, old boy," Martha assured him, though her voice lacked conviction. She'd placed an ad in the local paper, and a few families had come to see him, but none of them felt right. Champ, with his years of experience, could sense the inexperience in their hands, the lack of understanding in their eyes. He yearned to stay with Martha, to spend his remaining days grazing in the familiar pastures, his old bones resting in the sun. A lump formed in Martha's throat as she led him toward the trailer. The family who'd eventually bought him, a seemingly pleasant couple with a young son, were waiting. They smiled and spoke in soothing tones, but Champ remained wary. He caught a glimpse of Billy, the young boy, his eyes wide with excitement. There was a spark of genuine affection in those eyes, a flicker of hope that eased Champ's anxiety, if only for a moment. As the trailer doors closed behind him, shutting out the only world he'd ever known, Champ felt a wave of despair wash over him. He was leaving Martha, his sanctuary, his friend. He was stepping into the unknown, and fear gnawed at his heart. He whinnied one last time, a mournful sound that echoed through the Montana air, a farewell to the life he was leaving behind. The trailer rattled along seemingly endless highways, the unfamiliar sounds and smells overwhelming Champ's senses. He shifted uneasily, his hooves slipping on the metal floor. He missed the comforting scent of hay and the solid ground beneath his feet. He missed Martha's gentle touch and the reassuring sound of her voice. Finally, the trailer lurched to a stop, and the doors swung open, revealing a scene that was both familiar and alien. It was a ranch, but smaller than Martha's, with a tidy white farmhouse and a barn that looked freshly painted. Billy, his face beaming, was the first to greet him. "Welcome home, Champ," he exclaimed, his voice filled with childish enthusiasm. Champ stepped cautiously out of the trailer, his muscles stiff from the long journey. He took in his surroundings, his nostrils twitching. The air was different here, drier, with a hint of something unfamiliar. The land was flatter, the pastures smaller, and the fences seemed to close in on him. The couple, John and Mary, introduced themselves, their smiles warm and welcoming. They seemed kind enough, but Champ sensed a hesitancy in their touch, a lack of confidence in their handling. He'd been with Martha for so long, her every movement attuned to his needs, her understanding of him as deep as their bond. These people were strangers, their ways unfamiliar. The first few days were a whirlwind of new experiences. Champ was introduced to the other horses, a small group of Mares and geldings who eyed him with curiosity. He was put to work, pulling a plow and helping with the chores. But the work felt different here. It was rushed, demanding, with little regard for his age or his limits. John, though well-meaning, lacked Martha's gentle touch. He pushed Champ too hard, expecting him to perform like a younger horse. At night, Champ stood in his stall, his body aching, his spirit weary. The hay was coarse, the water trough often empty. He missed the spaciousness of his old stall, the soft bed of straw, the comforting presence of Martha nearby. Billy, however, was a bright spot in this unfamiliar world. He would sneak into the barn after his parents were asleep, bringing Champ apples and carrots, whispering stories in his ear. He would brush his coat with gentle strokes, his small hands surprisingly strong. Champ found himself drawn to the boy's innocence, his genuine affection. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. As the weeks turned into months, Champ's initial optimism faded. He was overworked, his body protesting with every step. He was lonely, missing Martha's companionship, and he was frustrated by John's lack of understanding. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Champ reached his breaking point. As John led him back to the barn, Champ reared up, his powerful legs striking out. John, caught off guard, stumbled back, his grip on the reins loosening. Champ seized the opportunity, breaking free and galloping into the night. The cool night air whipped past Champ as he galloped, the fences of the small ranch receding into the darkness. He ran with a desperate abandon he hadn't felt in years, his hooves pounding the earth, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Fear and exhilaration mingled within him, a potent cocktail that fueled his flight. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get away. Away from the confines of the ranch, away from the demanding work, away from the loneliness that had settled over him like a shroud. He longed for the familiar expanse of Martha's ranch, the comforting presence of his old friend. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, Champ slowed his pace, his body weary, his spirit still troubled. He found himself in unfamiliar territory, the landscape a stark contrast to the rolling hills of his Montana home. The land was flatter here, the vegetation sparser, the air thick with the scent of dust and unknown things. He wandered for days, his instincts guiding him. He grazed on patches of grass, drank from muddy streams, and sought shelter from the scorching sun under the meager shade of stunted trees. He encountered other animals, curious deer, wary coyotes, a grumpy badger who chased him from his burrow. He was alone, lost in a world that seemed both vast and indifferent. The nights were the hardest. He would lie down, his old bones aching, his stomach growling with hunger. He would listen to the sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets, the distant howl of a coyote, the occasional rumble of a passing truck, and he would remember Martha, her gentle voice, her warm touch, the comforting routine of their days. One day, he stumbled upon a small town, a cluster of houses and shops huddled around a dusty main street. He watched from a distance as people went about their lives, their faces etched with concerns he couldn't comprehend. He saw children playing, their laughter a sharp reminder of Billy, the one bright spot in his recent past. He was tempted to approach, to seek help, but fear held him back. He was a horse, a working animal out of place in this world of humans. He had learned to be wary of their unpredictable ways. He turned away from the town, his heart heavy, his future uncertain. He continued his journey, a solitary figure against the vast backdrop of the American landscape. He was a lost soul, searching for a place to belong, place to call home. The rumble grew louder, shaking the ground beneath Champ's hooves. He lifted his head, his ears pricked, his nostrils testing the air. The scent was unfamiliar, a pungent mix of oil, exhaust, and something he couldn't quite place. He moved towards the source of the noise, his curiosity outweighing his apprehension. He emerged from a thicket of trees and found himself facing a sight that made his heart pound. A wide ribbon of gray stretched out before him, filled with speeding vehicles that roared like monstrous beasts. This was the highway, a place he'd only glimpsed from a distance, a place that held both fascination and fear. He watched as the cars whizzed by, their shiny surfaces reflecting the sunlight, their horns blaring in a cacophony of sound. He was mesmerized by their speed, their power, their sheer number. He'd never seen so many vehicles in one place before. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt on the shoulder of the road, its tires spitting gravel. A woman emerged, her face pale, her hands shaking. She slammed the car door and leaned against it, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Champ watched her, his curiosity piqued. He'd seen humans before, of course, but this one was different. There was a vulnerability about her, a sadness that resonated with his own. The woman, Sarah, noticed him standing by the side of the road. She straightened up, her eyes widening in surprise. "A horse?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She took a tentative step towards him, her hand outstretched. "Hey there," she said softly. "Are you lost?" Champ hesitated, his instincts warning him to stay away. But there was something about this woman, something in her gentle voice and hesitant touch, that eased his fear. He lowered his head and nudged her hand, his soft whinny a tentative greeting. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She'd been driving for days, fleeing a life that had crumbled around her. The loss of her husband, followed by the news that she was losing her home, had sent her spiraling into despair. She'd packed her meager belongings and hit the road, hoping to outrun her grief. But the road was long, and the memories were relentless. She felt lost, alone, adrift in a world that no longer made sense. And then she saw Champ, standing by the side of the road, his eyes reflecting the same sadness she felt in her own heart. In that moment, something shifted within her. She saw in Champ a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the road of loss and uncertainty. She felt a connection with him, a sense of shared understanding that transcended species. She reached out and stroked his neck, her touch gentle, reassuring. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here now." Champ leaned into her touch, his fear receding. He felt a flicker of hope, a sense that perhaps he wasn't alone after all. Perhaps this woman, this stranger with the sad eyes, could help him find his way. Sarah, still reeling from her own losses, felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness towards the lost horse. She couldn't leave him to fend for himself on the dangerous highway. But what could she do? She knew nothing about horses. Hesitantly, she reached into her car and pulled out the remains of an apple, a forgotten remnant from a roadside stop. She offered it to Champ, who eyed it cautiously before taking a tentative bite. As Champ munched on the apple, Sarah examined him more closely. He was clearly older, his coat a bit dull, his bones showing slightly beneath his skin. But his eyes were bright, and there was a quiet dignity about him that touched her heart. "What are you doing all alone out here, fella?" she asked softly, as if he could understand. She decided to call her friend Maggie, who lived on a farm a few states away. Maggie knew about animals. Maybe she could offer some advice. "Maggie, you won't believe this," Sarah said when her friend picked up. "But there's a horse on the highway." Maggie, ever practical, responded, "A horse? On the highway? Sarah, are you sure you're all right? You haven't been drinking that cheap gas station coffee again, have you?" Sarah laughed, a shaky sound that surprised even her. "No, Maggie. I'm serious. He looks lost, and I can't just leave him here." After a pause, Maggie said, "Well, I guess you better try to get him off the highway first. Can you coax him? I have an apple core," Sarah offered with a slight tremor in her voice. "That might work. Try to lead him somewhere safe, away from the road. Then we'll figure something out." Following Maggie's instructions, Sarah managed to coax Champ away from the highway, using the apple core as a lure. They found a small clearing behind a thicket of trees, a temporary haven from the noise and danger of the road. As she sat there, watching Champ graze on the sparse grass, Sarah felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in days. His presence was strangely comforting, a reminder that she wasn't entirely alone in the world. A rustle in the undergrowth broke the silence. Champ's ears pricked up, and he let out a soft whinny. Sarah, her curiosity piqued, moved towards the sound. She gasped as she saw what had caught Champ's attention. Huddled in a small pothole, shivering and whimpering, were 3 tiny puppies. Their eyes were barely open, their fur matted and dirty. They looked abandoned, helpless, and utterly vulnerable. Sarah's heart ached for them. She knelt down, her tears flowing freely now. She gently gathered the puppies into her arms, their tiny bodies trembling against her chest. Champ watched her, his head tilted, his eyes filled with a gentle understanding. It was as if he knew, somehow, that these tiny creatures needed their help. Sarah looked at Champ, then at the puppies, a new resolve forming within her. She couldn't leave them to their fate. She would find a way to help them, even if she didn't know how. This unexpected encounter, this shared discovery of vulnerable life in need, had sparked something within her. It was a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going, a reason to hope. Holding the 3 tiny puppies, Sarah felt a wave of responsibility wash over her. Their helplessness mirrored her own feelings of vulnerability, and yet, paradoxically, it also ignited a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her husband's death. She couldn't abandon these creatures, just as she couldn't abandon the gentle horse who had led her to them. Champ, sensing her determination, nudged her gently with his nose, as if offering his support. He watched with quiet curiosity as Sarah carefully settled the puppies in the back seat of her car, wrapping them in an old blanket she found in the trunk. "Looks like we've got ourselves a situation, Champ," she said, a faint smile flickering across her lips. "But we'll figure it out. We'll do this together." Their first challenge was finding food for the puppies. Sarah remembered seeing a small town a few miles back. With Champ patiently following behind, she drove back to the town, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. The town, drowsy in the afternoon heat, seemed to hold its breath as Sarah and Champ made their way down the main street. Heads turned, curious eyes followed them. Sarah, feeling self-conscious, hurried into the first store she saw, a dusty general store with a faded sign that read, "Johnson's Emporium." Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten things. A bell tinkled as Sarah entered, announcing her presence. An elderly man, perched on a stool behind the counter, looked up, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of a woman with dirt smudges on her face and a horse tied up outside. Sarah, flustered, explained her situation, her words tumbling over each other. The man, Mr. Johnson, listened patiently, his weathered face softening with understanding. He led her to a shelf stocked with dusty cans and jars, helping her choose puppy formula and a few other essentials. Back in the car, Sarah fed the puppies, their tiny mouths eagerly sucking on the makeshift bottles. Champ watched, his ears twitching, his gentle eyes filled with concern. As the puppies suckled, Sarah felt a wave of tenderness wash over her. These tiny creatures, so fragile and dependent, had become her responsibility, her purpose. With renewed determination, Sarah and Champ continued their journey. They traveled for days, stopping at small towns and roadside rest areas, always on the lookout for food and shelter. Sarah, with Champ's help, learned to forage for edible plants, supplementing their meager supplies. She learned to read the land, to find water sources, to anticipate the changing weather. Champ, in turn, seemed to thrive on the companionship. He followed Sarah with unwavering loyalty, his instincts guiding them through unfamiliar territory. He protected her from the dangers of the road, his presence a deterrent to any would-be predators. Their bond deepened with each passing day. They shared a silent understanding, a connection forged in adversity and strengthened by their shared purpose. They were two lost souls, finding solace in each other's company, their journey a testament to the resilience of the human and animal spirit. The puppies, now named Hope, Faith, and Charity by Sarah, were thriving. Their eyes were open, their fur was growing softer, and their playful nips were becoming less tentative and more mischievous. They tumbled over each other in the back seat of the car, a constant source of amusement and comfort for Sarah. But as the days passed, Sarah knew she couldn't care for them indefinitely. They needed a proper home, a place where they could run and play and receive the care they deserved. She thought of Maggie, her friend with the farm. Maybe she could take them in. "What do you think, Champ?" she asked, stroking his neck as he grazed in a roadside meadow. "Think Maggie would like some company?" Champ whinnied softly, nudging her with his head as if in agreement. Sarah took that as a good sign. With renewed purpose, Sarah set her sights on reaching Maggie's farm. She consulted her worn map, tracing the route with her finger. It was still a long way, but the thought of finding a safe haven for the puppies, and perhaps for herself, spurred her on. The journey, however, was not without its challenges. A sudden storm forced them to take shelter under a rickety bridge, the roar of the rain echoing around them. A flat tire left them stranded on a deserted stretch of road, the sun beating down mercilessly, and once, a pack of stray dogs, their eyes gleaming with hunger, threatened to attack, only to be driven off by Champ's fierce protectiveness. Through it all, Sarah and Champ relied on each other. Sarah's determination grew with each obstacle overcome, and Champ's unwavering loyalty provided a constant source of strength. They were a team now, bound by their shared journey and their commitment to the three little lives in their care. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Champ suddenly stopped, his ears pricked, his nostrils testing the air. He let out a soft whinny, his gaze fixed on a distant point in the landscape. Sarah, sensing his excitement, followed his gaze. In the distance, she saw a faint light, a beacon in the gathering darkness. "What is it, Champ?" she asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Champ pawed the ground, eager to move forward. Sarah, trusting his instincts, climbed back into the car. The puppies nestled safely beside her. She started the engine, and with Champ leading the way, they headed towards the light. As they drew closer, the light grew brighter, revealing a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley. A farmhouse, a barn, a few outbuildings. It was a farm just like Maggie had described. Sarah's heart pounded with hope. Could this be it? Could this be the sanctuary they had been searching for? With Champ by her side, she drove through the open gates, her heart filled with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. The journey had been long and arduous, but perhaps, just perhaps, they had finally reached their destination. The farmhouse door opened before Sarah even had a chance to knock. A woman stood framed in the warm light spilling out, her face etched with concern as she took in Sarah's disheveled appearance and the horse standing patiently behind her. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice cautious but kind. I hope so," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling with exhaustion and a hint of desperation. "My name is Sarah, and this is Champ. We found some puppies and—" The woman's eyes softened as she noticed the 3 small bundles nestled in Sarah's arms. "Oh my," she breathed, stepping aside. Come in. You must be freezing." Sarah stepped into the warm kitchen, the aroma of freshly baked bread filling her senses. The woman, who introduced herself as Maggie, bustled around, offering Sarah a cup of tea and a plate of cookies. Champ was led to the barn by Maggie's son, a lanky teenager named Tom, who seemed as surprised by their arrival as his mother. As Sarah recounted their journey, the hardships they faced, and their unexpected discovery of the abandoned puppies, Maggie listened with growing empathy. She was a woman who understood the language of the heart, a woman who had dedicated her life to caring for those in need, both human and animal. "Well, Sarah," Maggie said, her eyes twinkling, "it seems you've found your way to the right place. We always have room for one more, or for, in this case." Relief washed over Sarah, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Maggie," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Maggie settled Sarah in a cozy guest room, while Tom, with Champ's gentle guidance, prepared a stall in the barn. The puppies, exhausted from their journey, quickly fell asleep in a basket lined with soft blankets. Over the next few days, Sarah settled into the rhythm of life at Maggie's farm. She helped with the chores, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, and tending to the other animals that called the farm home. She spent hours playing with the puppies, watching them grow stronger and more playful each day. Champ, too, seemed content. He grazed in the lush pastures, his coat regaining its shine, his muscles growing stronger. He spent his days exploring the farm, befriending the other horses, and enjoying Tom's enthusiastic grooming sessions. Sarah found solace in the simple routine, the quiet companionship of the animals, and the warmth of Maggie's friendship. She began to heal from the wounds of her past, the pain of her loss slowly easing its grip on her heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Maggie gently broached the subject of Sarah's past. Sarah, hesitant at first, found herself opening up to Maggie, sharing the story of her husband's death, the loss of their home, and the despair that had driven her to flee. Maggie listened with compassion, offering words of comfort and understanding. "Sometimes, Sarah," she said softly, "the best way to heal is to face what we're running from." Sarah pondered Maggie's words, a seed of truth taking root in her heart. She realized that running hadn't solved anything. It had only delayed the inevitable confrontation with her grief, with her fears, with the reality of her new life. Champ, sensing her inner turmoil, nudged her gently, his presence a silent reminder of the strength and resilience they had found in each other. Perhaps with Champ by her side, she could face her past and find a way to move forward. Life at Maggie's farm was a balm to Sarah's wounded spirit. The days were filled with purpose, the nights with peaceful slumber. She found a rhythm in the chores, a companionship in the animals, and a genuine friendship in Maggie. Yet, a part of her remained restless, a shadow lingering in the corners of her mind. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived, addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. With trembling hands, Sarah opened it, her heart pounding in her chest. It was from the bank, a final notice regarding her late husband's debts. The house, the last tangible piece of her old life, was to be auctioned off if the remaining balance wasn't settled within the month. The news hit Sarah like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, the letter fluttering to the floor. The past, which she had tried so hard to outrun, had finally caught up with her. The peaceful sanctuary she had found at Maggie's farm suddenly felt fragile, temporary. Maggie, sensing her distress, sat beside her, offering a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, what is it?" Sarah, her voice choked with emotion, explained the situation. Maggie listened patiently, her eyes filled with understanding. "Sarah," she said gently, "you can't keep running. You need to face this." Sarah knew Maggie was right. Running had only postponed the inevitable. She had to go back, confront the reality of her situation, and find a way to move forward. The thought of returning to the place where she had shared so much happiness with her husband, only to face the stark reality of his absence and the loss of their home, filled her with dread. But she also knew she couldn't hide forever. Champ, sensing her turmoil, nuzzled her hand, his soft whinny a comforting presence. He had been her constant companion throughout her journey, a source of strength and unwavering support. She looked into his kind eyes, and a wave of determination washed over her. "You're right, Maggie," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I need to go back." Maggie smiled, her eyes filled with admiration. "That's the spirit, Sarah. And don't worry, Champ can come with you. He'll be your strength." Sarah nodded, her heart filled with gratitude for Maggie's friendship and Champ's unwavering loyalty. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she wasn't alone. She had Champ, her loyal companion, and the lessons she had learned on their journey: resilience, courage, and the power of facing your fears. The journey back was different. This time, Sarah wasn't fleeing. She was returning. With Champ by her side, she drove towards her old life, not with dread, but with a quiet determination. The landscape, once a blur of fear and escape, now held a familiar comfort. As she approached her hometown, memories flooded back, Sunday drives with her husband, picnics in the park, laughter echoing through the rooms of their now empty house. A bittersweet ache settled in her heart, a reminder of the love she had lost, but also a testament to the enduring power of those memories. The house, when she finally reached it, stood silent and forlorn. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown, the windows staring blankly out at the world. It was a shell of its former self, a physical manifestation of her own grief. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped out of the car, Champ following close behind. She ran a hand along the weathered wood of the porch railing, a wave of sadness washing over her. This was where she and her husband had built their life, their dreams, their future. Now it was just a house, an empty vessel holding the ghosts of the past. But as she stood there, the setting sun casting long shadows across the yard, a new feeling emerged, a sense of acceptance. The pain of loss was still there, a dull ache in her heart, but it no longer held her captive. She had faced her fears, confronted her grief, and emerged stronger, more resilient. The next morning, Sarah visited the bank, her head held high, her steps firm. She presented them with a plan, a way to repay her husband's debts, a way to keep the house. It wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to make it work. She found a job at a local stable, her experience with Champ proving invaluable. She cared for the horses with a gentle touch, her understanding of their needs born from her journey with Champ. The stable owner, a gruff but kind man named George, recognized her dedication and offered her a small cottage on the property. Life slowly began to take shape. Sarah worked hard, her days filled with the comforting routine of caring for the horses. She spent her evenings in her cozy cottage, the silence no longer deafening, but a peaceful respite after a long day. And always, there was Champ, her loyal companion, her anchor in the storm. He grazed in the fields surrounding the cottage, his presence a constant source of comfort. They would go for long walks in the evenings, exploring the countryside, their bond deeper than ever. Champ, no longer a lost and lonely horse, had found his forever home, a place where he was loved and cherished. One sunny afternoon, as Sarah and Champ were enjoying a picnic by the river, a group of children approached, their eyes wide with admiration for the magnificent horse. Sarah, remembering Billy, the boy who had shown Champ kindness in his time of need, smiled and invited the children to pet him. As she watched the children's faces light up with joy, Sarah realized that her journey with Champ had not only brought healing to her own heart, but had also opened her up to new possibilities, new connections, a new beginning. She had faced her past, embraced her present, and found hope for the future. And through it all, Champ had been her constant companion, her loyal friend, her guiding star on the road to a new beginning.